Carlos out of the draw. That give hope to some of the other players that they can maybe win this title?
And it looks like it's going to stay like that for some time.
Today is April 21st. Madrid is open. The courts are live. The crowd is loud. And the man who owns this tournament more than almost anyone alive isn't there. Alcaraz withdrew.
I'm really disappointed that I'm not able to play here in Madrid.
Right wrist. Second consecutive year missing his own home slam. The announcement hit last Friday and it stung. But it wasn't the withdrawal that broke the internet. It was Djokovic. He pulled out the same day. Same tournament. Same silence on paper. But behind that silence, behind that single social media post, Djokovic finally revealed what he really thinks about Alcaraz withdrawing from Madrid.
And then you have obviously other young players that are definitely going to challenge them.
And it was buried inside something most fans scrolled past without blinking. This man has won Madrid 3 times: 2011, 2016, 2019. He's been around long enough to know exactly what it means when a player of Alcaraz's caliber keeps stepping away from big stages with injuries. And his take? It goes places the media won't follow.
Yes, there was domination obviously from Rafa on clay or Roger on grass.
You haven't heard this perspective yet. Nobody's said it this way. If this channel isn't already in your subscriptions, fix that before you keep reading. You'll want the full breakdown. What Djokovic said changes everything. Novak Djokovic is 38 years old. He has won 24 Grand Slams. He has 3 Madrid titles to his name: 2011, 2016, and 2019. He has been in this sport longer than Carlos Alcaraz has been alive as a professional. And when a man like that decides to open his mouth about a rival, about a tournament, about a pattern he's been watching unfold, you don't just scroll past it. You stop, you listen, because Djokovic doesn't speak carelessly. So what exactly did he say? And more importantly, why does it matter right now, in this exact moment of the 2026 clay season? To understand the weight of his statement, you first need to understand what the last 4 weeks have looked like for Carlos Alcaraz. Because the story of his Madrid withdrawal doesn't start on April 17th.
He didn't play Madrid last year as well.
It starts much earlier. It starts with a championship run that looked brilliant on the surface but was quietly destroying his body underneath. Alcaraz went to Monte Carlo and reached the final. He pushed Jannik Sinner to the absolute limit in that title match. He played extraordinary tennis, the crowd loved it, the highlight reels were everywhere. But here's the detail that got buried under all the praise. Alcaraz was already feeling discomfort during that tournament. Not enough to stop him, just enough to be a warning sign that he chose to push through. Then he traveled to Barcelona, his home city, his people, his tournament. And he told the press, and this is a direct reflection of his mindset at the time: "This week is one where I should take a break, but Barcelona is a very special place for me." He played anyway. He won his opening match against Otto Virtanen, and then his wrist spoke louder than any emotional attachment to a city ever could. He withdrew mid-tournament. Medical tests came back. The results were worse than anticipated.
The wrist injury for Carlos Alcaraz, we've seen him with a cast.
A right wrist injury was serious enough that continuing would have been reckless. And suddenly, the Madrid question, the question the entire clay court calendar had been building toward, was answered before it was even officially asked. He wasn't coming. For the second consecutive year, Carlos Alcaraz confirmed he would miss the Mutua Madrid Open.
I'm really disappointed that I'm not able to play here in Madrid.
The same tournament he won in 2022, the same tournament he won in 2023. His home Masters 1000 event, the tournament where Spanish fans show up in numbers that make the Caja Magica feel less like a sports venue and more like a coronation. His statement on social media was genuinely emotional. "Madrid is home," he wrote, "one of the most special places on the calendar for me. That's why it hurts so much not to be able to play here for the second year in a row. It hurts especially not to be in front of my people." Now, that's the Alcaraz side of the story. Emotional, relatable, clean narrative, injured player misses home tournament, tennis fans feel sympathy, story closed, but Djokovic doesn't do clean narratives. Earlier that same Friday, hours before Alcaraz made his announcement, Djokovic had already confirmed his own withdrawal from Madrid, shoulder injury. He'd been managing it since pulling out of Monte Carlo. He skipped Miami entirely. His last competitive match on tour was a fourth-round loss to Jack Draper at Indian Wells in March. That's how long this man has been off the court. Weeks of silence, weeks of recovery, 3 consecutive Masters. 1,000 events missed: Miami, Monte Carlo, and now Madrid. By any measure, Djokovic's 2026 spring has been a disaster on paper, but he didn't disappear into that disaster quietly. And that's the part of this story that everyone is underreacting to. Because when Djokovic, a man who has been in this sport through every era, who watched Federer manage a body that was aging faster than his talent was fading, who watched Nadal fight through pain that most humans would have retired over, when that man comments on Alcaraz's physical situation and how it's unfolding, there is a lived experience behind every single word he uses. He's not a commentator, he's not a journalist. He's someone who has personally navigated the exact crossroads that Alcaraz is standing at right now. At the 2025 Madrid Open, a completely different edition of this tournament, 1 year earlier, Djokovic was present. Alcaraz had withdrawn from that event too, with a different injury at the time, and Djokovic addressed it in a press conference. What he said in that moment was revealing enough that it stayed in the consciousness of anyone who was paying real attention. He said Carlos is the #1 star in Madrid with the Spanish public. He acknowledged that Alcaraz had won Monte Carlo that year, then played again just 2 days later in Barcelona, another final. And then he pointed to something that most analysts were glossing over: the physical toll, the scheduling, the fact that Alcaraz was running his body at a pace that had consequences attached to it. He didn't say it with anger. He didn't say it with smugness, but he said it with the quiet certainty of a man who had seen this movie before and knew exactly how the next act was going to play out. That was 2025. Fast forward to 2026, and the pattern has repeated itself with an almost eerie accuracy. Monte Carlo, Barcelona. Wrist this time instead of the adductor. Madrid gone. Roland Garros is now the target, but the question marks are stacking up around it. And here is where Djokovic's 2026 statement, the one that everyone glossed over because it was buried in the broader withdrawal news cycle, becomes genuinely important. Djokovic has spoken about Alcaraz multiple times over the past 2 years.
What they have done in the previous 2 years.
Not in tabloid sound bites, in genuine assessments of where the sport is heading and who is capable of what. And across all of those assessments, one thread has been consistent and unmistakable. He believes Alcaraz has already reached the tennis level of the Big Three. His words, not a paraphrase. He placed a 22-year-old Spaniard in the same category as himself, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, in terms of pure on-court ability. That is not a compliment that Djokovic hands out casually. That is a statement from a man with 24 Grand Slams who has very precise standards for what greatness actually looks like. But here's where it gets layered. Saying someone has the tennis level of the Big Three is a very different thing from saying someone has the durability of the Big Three. It's a very different thing from saying someone has the scheduling discipline of the Big Three. And it is absolutely a different thing from saying someone has the long-term physical management of the Big Three. Djokovic has never said those things about Alcaraz, not once. And the absence of that specific praise, from a man who praises him so generously in every other dimension, is a statement in itself. Look at what Djokovic himself has done over the course of his career when his body sent him signals. He pulled out of tournaments, he managed his load, he was ruthless about the calendar in a way that prioritized Grand Slams above everything else. He took criticism for it. Fans called him out for skipping events. But his Grand Slam tally tells you everything you need to know about whether that strategy worked. Alcaraz has 5 Grand Slam titles at 22 years old. The number is staggering. But the way his body keeps breaking down at crucial clay court moments is a pattern that Djokovic, of all people, is uniquely positioned to decode. After both withdrawals from Madrid were confirmed on April 17th, the conversation in tennis circles shifted immediately. Not just to Madrid itself, but also what the draw would look like without them. The conversation shifted to Roland Garros, to determine whether Alcaraz would be fit to defend his title, to determine whether Djokovic would make it to Paris healthy enough to be a genuine contender. The Italian Open in Rome is now the last major clay court event before Roland Garros begins on May 18th. For both of these players, Rome is no longer a tune-up. It's a medical trial. It's the moment where the sport finds out whether its biggest stars are going to show up for the tournament that matters most in this particular stretch of the calendar. Djokovic's situation carries a different kind of weight attached to it. He is not committed to remaining on the ATP Tour beyond the end of 2026. The Madrid tournament organizers, in their response to his withdrawal, released a statement hoping he would be back to compete in 2027. That phrasing alone tells you something. You don't write, "We hope to see you in 2027," unless the possibility of a different scenario is sitting right underneath the surface of that sentence. This is potentially one of the last years that Novak Djokovic competes at the highest level of professional tennis. Every tournament he skips now carries a different emotional weight than it did 5 years ago. And the fact that he is sitting out Madrid, a tournament where he has 3 titles, where the crowd gives him an energy he has described as electric, where he has historically played some of his best tennis, tells you the shoulder injury is being taken seriously. He wants Roland Garros. He has never won the Olympic gold and the French Open in the same year. He won Olympic gold in Paris in 2024. He has won Roland Garros 3 times, but a 4th French Open title at 38, in what could be one of his final full seasons on tour. That is the prize he is protecting everything for. And that changes how you read his take on Alcaraz. When Djokovic looks at Alcaraz missing Madrid for the 2nd consecutive year, he isn't seeing a rival weaken. He isn't quietly celebrating a more open draw somewhere down the road. A man of his experience and intelligence is watching a generational talent navigate the exact same fork in the road that defines careers at the highest level. And his public commentary on Alcaraz reflects a genuine complexity that goes far beyond professional rivalry. He called him respectful. He praised his values. He said his own son, his actual son, had replaced Nadal with Alcaraz as his favorite player. That is not the language of a competitor dismissing a threat. That is the language of a man who sees something in Alcaraz that reminds him of what tennis greatness is supposed to look like. But the concern, the thing Djokovic has been telegraphing through careful, measured language for over a year now, is whether Alcaraz's body will let him be everything he is clearly capable of being. The scheduling pressure on a Spanish player with a home crowd demanding his presence at Barcelona, at Madrid, at every single clay event on the calendar is immense. Alcaraz himself admitted in Barcelona that he knew he should take a break. He played anyway. His wrist paid for it. Djokovic has never made that mistake twice in the same season. Once his body sent a clear message, he heard it. He protected the Grand Slams. He let the Masters titles go when he had to. His record on that front is essentially flawless across his entire career. So when he talks about Alcaraz reaching the tennis level of the Big Three, and the implicit question hanging behind it is whether he will reach the longevity of the Big Three, that gap, that specific gap between having the shots and having the career, is exactly what his Madrid statement was pointing toward without ever saying it directly. Carlos Alcaraz is now in a race against time before Roland Garros. His next scheduled events are Rome and then Paris. He needs match practice. He needs clay court rhythm. He needs to arrive at Roland Garros, where he has won back-to-back titles and is carrying 3,000 points into the tournament, with enough match sharpness to defend against a Sinner who currently holds a 390-point lead in the rankings and has been playing the most consistent tennis of anyone on tour this spring. Sinner won Monte Carlo. Sinner took the world #1 ranking back from Alcaraz as a direct consequence of that final. Sinner is currently the top seed in Madrid and the heavy favorite to win. If Sinner takes Madrid, that ranking gap grows, and Alcaraz arrives at Roland Garros already behind, already carrying a wrist injury, already 2 Masters events short on clay court preparation. The pressure on that situation is enormous, and Djokovic, watching all of it from the outside in his own recovery, with his own Roland Garros ambitions quietly burning, understands the dynamics at play better than almost any other living person. He has competed against the greatest players of multiple generations. He watched Federer's body start making decisions that Federer's mind wasn't ready to make. He watched Nadal's knees eventually end a career that his heart would have continued indefinitely. He understands what happens when the body and the ambition stop being aligned. His statement about Alcaraz isn't cruelty dressed up as praise. It's something more uncomfortable than that. It's an honest observation from someone who has no reason to protect Alcaraz's feelings professionally, and yet chooses to speak about him with respect, with admiration, and with a clear-eyed acknowledgement of the reality that the sport's next generational giant is going to have to figure out how to take care of himself before the talent becomes irrelevant. That's the thing about being in the same era as Djokovic. He doesn't need to say the difficult parts out loud. He frames the praise carefully enough that the difficult parts are already in the room. He has already reached the tennis level of the big three. Already. Past tense certainty on the talent, present tense silence on the sustainability. That silence is the statement. That silence is what Djokovic finally revealed about what he really thinks about Alcaraz missing Madrid and missing it again, and continuing to push through injury warnings that a more seasoned professional would treat with considerably more caution. Whether Alcaraz hears it, whether his team hears it, whether the conversations happening behind closed doors in the Alcaraz camp are already addressing exactly this issue. None of that is visible from the outside. What is visible is the result. 2 consecutive Madrid withdrawals. A wrist injury arrived right when the clay season was supposed to be building toward its peak. A defending Roland Garros champion who is heading into Paris without the match play, his rivals have been accumulating for weeks. Djokovic himself isn't in a position to lecture anyone about staying healthy right now. He's sitting out his 3rd consecutive Masters 1000 event. His own body is a work in progress. But the difference, and this is the difference that actually matters, is that Djokovic chose this. He made a deliberate decision after Indian Wells to protect the shoulder, skip the grind, and arrive at Roland Garros with a body capable of going 7 matches at a Grand Slam level. Alcaraz didn't choose his Madrid absence. His body chose it for him, in Barcelona. During a tournament, he admitted he should have skipped but attended anyway. That distinction is everything. That is what Djokovic has spent 2 years carefully, respectfully, admiringly pointing toward without ever saying it in a way that could be turned into a headline designed to make him look petty. He got one anyway. Because that's how tennis media works in 2026. And honestly, he knew it would. The Madrid Open is already underway. Sinner is the favorite. The draw is wide open in ways it hasn't been in years. Some players going to take advantage of the gap left by Alcaraz, Djokovic, and Fritz, all being absent at once. The tournament will produce a story. A champion will be crowned on May 3rd. But the real story of this Madrid, the one that will matter in 3 weeks when Roland Garros begins, is the one being written in recovery rooms, physiotherapy sessions, and honest conversations between players and their medical teams. Djokovic is writing his version of that story. Alcaraz is writing his. Whether both of them arrive in Paris healthy enough to contest the title that defines the clay season, that is the question that the 2026 tennis year is already being built around. And Djokovic, in his measured, deliberate, surgically precise way, has already told you exactly what he thinks the answer might be. You just had to listen past the praise to hear it. If this breakdown gave you a perspective you haven't come across anywhere else, subscribe to the channel right now. Hit the bell notification so you don't miss the Rome and Roland Garros coverage coming up. This channel covers the angles the mainstream tennis media won't commit to, and the clay season is only getting more intense from here. The next few weeks are going to change the entire conversation around Alcaraz, Djokovic, and Sinner, and you want to be here when that happens.